Bon après-midi tout le monde et bienvenue à cette mise.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this update on power restoration efforts.
And welcome to today's update on storm recovery and power restoration efforts. This afternoon's speakers are in the following order: Nicole Poirier, Vice President, Operations NB Power, and the Honorable Chris Austin, Minister of Public Safety. Les porte-parole aujourd'hui.
The spokesperson today, in the following order, Vice President for NB Power Operations, Ms. Nicole Poirier, and the Minister of Public Safety, Mr. Chris Austin. So before I give the floor to the Vice President, make sure that your mics are turned off.
I'd like to remind everybody online to ensure your microphones are placed on mute. Cool.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for an update on power restoration efforts. Bonjour, merci de vous.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for an update on power restoration efforts.
Thank you for your patience and understanding, and also for your kind gestures and words on social media and to our crews. I have to say, it definitely goes a long way. Our crews are sharing some heartwarming stories around your kindness and hospitality. So sincerely, thank you for that. New Brunswickers really know how to care for one another during these difficult times. Just some information on the restoration efforts. Crews continue to work and make steady progress with approximately 108,000 customers restored to date. However, there's still a lot of work to do. As of 2 p.m. today, approximately 21,000 customers remain without power. There are more than 800 people working across the province, including 340 actually field crews, which make up internal and external crews. And this also includes an additional 111 crews that joined us today from outside the province. These crews came from Hydro-Quebec, Montreal, and crews returning from Maine today as they were restoring power there. I just wanted to give you an example of what we're dealing with. So just to explain a little bit about some of the restoration efforts and how difficult some of these outages can be. Yesterday, we had a two-man crew working in the Maserel Settlement Road and Kingsclear area. So we had one crew with a contractor crew and a vegetation crew, so 3 crews. Together, they were able to reconnect about 500 customers in a 14-hour period by removing 20 large trees and repairing multiple cross arms and poles. We know that being without power for an extended period of time is very difficult, especially as we approach the holidays. I can assure you that everyone involved in this response is working together towards the same goal, which is safely restoring power for all of our customers before Christmas. I can say that damage reports would state that this event is largely a tree event. And I want to assure New Brunswickers that vegetation management is definitely a priority for NB Power. We've spent over $120 million in the past 9 years on vegetation management. But as we all know, we have a lot of trees in New Brunswick. Vegetation management continues to be a focus for us and is actually a part of our recent GRA filing, where you can see additional dollars in our budgets for the next 3 years. I'd like to say for those without power, a few reminders. No matter where you live, from remote rural areas to the suburbs and everything in between, getting your power restored is important to us. As we finish up in some areas, crews are moving to assist in other communities. We will not let up until everyone has power again. Je tiens à souligner que
no matter where you live, from remote rural areas to the suburbs and everything in between, getting your power restored is important to us. As we finish up in some areas, crews are moved to assist in other communities. We won't let up until everyone has power again.
Our customer care center at the 1-800-663-6273 for updates to restoration times, as they may change as the work required is assessed and planned. You can also look at our website. I also just wanted to mention, as it relates to the website, we are having some technical difficulties with our online outage map. The number of outages is not accurate, but the information on estimated times of restoration is accurate. That remains accurate. So a team is currently working on that to resolve the issue, and as soon as we can get it resolved, we will let you know when all the information is accurate again. I'd also like to offer sincere thanks to everyone helping with this difficult restoration effort, including all of our private contractors, our municipal partners, EMO, DTI, our out-of-province support, and our own employees and support staff. As provided by the example, the work itself is challenging and takes time. It requires focus to keep everyone safe. Our restoration teams are committed to New Brunswickers, and it's unwavering. Safety is at the heart of everything we do, and we want to ensure New Brunswickers are safe too. So again, if you see any power lines that are down or vegetations on our lines, make sure you stay at least 10 meters away. We'll continue to provide daily updates on our progress. I know that we'll get through this event together by continuing to focus on doing the work safely to get everyone's power restored as soon as possible. Thank you. Merci.
I'd like to begin by thanking Nicole Poirier for being here again today, Vice President of Operations for NB Power. And again, we have Kyle Levitt here with us, the Director for New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization. So there's no question that NB Power has been working very diligently during this time to restore thousands of customers, and they've been successful for thousands of customers since the storm hit on Monday. And I don't know if we can always appreciate how difficult the task is I mean, we're talking about miles, kilometers of downed trees in very hard-to-reach places. And from a peak of well over 100,000, we're now down to under 25,000, which is truly amazing. So, Nicole, on behalf of the department, and I know other New Brunswickers, we do want to really say thank you. And to the men and women that are out there working the lines day and night, I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, and it means a lot, especially during this time of year. I know there's been a lot of tributes and thank you messages on social media that have shown deep appreciation as well for all the work that NB Power has done, its crews, contractors, New Brunswick Emergency Measures, government departments, municipalities, firefighters and volunteers. Everybody's really been stepping up to the plate. We're hearing stories of neighbors that are looking after one another. One neighbor would have their power restored. They would, give a generator to the neighbor next door to help them out and checking on them. So that's always heartwarming to hear, especially during this time of year. We have come a long way just in the last few days, but we understand there's still a long way to go. Some of the videos on social media show the destruction in areas around Harvey and farther down into Charlotte County. We have been able, of course, to get the Charlotte County Hospital back up and running, and roads to Blacks Harbor and other areas are open. As I mentioned on Tuesday, continue to check on your neighbors. I know that many of you have been doing that. I want to encourage you to continue to check on those, especially those that are vulnerable and seniors. As the weather gets colder, it's more critical now than ever to make sure they're okay, and reach out to us or your local fire department if there is some issues with the individuals that are without power. If you're using a generator, please, I remind you, do it safely. Never use a generator indoors or near windows or doors. That's very important. Always make sure that they are outside and well ventilated. There are warming centers throughout the province. They're offering different foods, snacks, coffee. There's charging stations and water for those that need them, and a complete updated list of warming centers and generator safety tips are available at gnb.ca/storm. I'm sure that many of you are wondering about disaster financial assistance. To have a better understanding of the scope of the damages from the storm, New Brunswickers can now register their damages. It's important that people register their storm damage so we can have an accurate picture before any decisions on disaster financial assistance can be made. There is a threshold that has to be met before the DFA can kick in. There has to be $3 million in uninsurable losses before DFA can take effect, and it only covers necessities that insurance does not cover. DFA is not a replacement for insurance, and I want to say that again. The disaster financial assistance is not a replacement for insurance. New Brunswickers should be checking with their private insurance companies now in regards to damage to their property. Now, in regards to reporting uninsured damage to their property, we encourage you to call a toll-free number, which is now online, at 1-888-298-8555. That number again is 1-888-298-8555. You can also register online at gnb.ca/storm. The damage report line is available to receive calls between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. from Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday. The line will not be operational on December 25th, 26th, and January 1st. The damage report line program allows residents, tenants, small businesses, and not-for-profit organizations to receive information and register their storm-related damage with a single phone call. Again, you can find all the details and much more related to the storm, gnb.ca/storm. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't our first storm. It certainly won't be our last. And every event that happens, we learn and we grow to be better prepared for the next one that comes. For those of you that do not have power restored yet, please be patient. NB Power and their private contractors and others from outside the province are working diligently to get you restored as quickly as possible, and we do appreciate your patience and we understand the frustration. Please be patient, and they're working around the clock to ensure everyone is restored for Christmas. So we are hopeful. But again, please be patient with them. One more thing I do want to add. There has been some questions from people that have been affected by this storm in relation to food loss. So in that regard, I would encourage people to contact the Red Cross. They will take you through eligibility requirements for any food loss that you have. And the information to the Red Cross is also on our website, gnb.ca/storm. So again, I want to thank the crews at MB Power that are working so hard, EMO, local entities that are working to get people restored and back up to normal. So thank you again. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Poirier. Before we proceed with questions from members of the media, I'd like to highlight the presence of Kyle Level, Director of New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization. He is available to answer any questions. Avant de passer aux questions des journalistes.
Before we move to reporters' questions, I would like to say that the director of New Brunswick EMO is here, Mr. Kyle Levitt. He is here to answer your questions as well.
One question and a quick follow-up. You have the right to pose your questions in the official language of your choice. Just to let you know, I will be alternating between members of the media who are present in the media room and those online. Nous allons maintenant procéder aux questions.
We will now move on to reporters' questions. Every reporter can ask one question and one quick follow-up question. You have the right to ask your questions in the official language of your choice. And for your information, I will alternate between the media members who are here in person and those online. Laura Brown, CTV.
Question for MB Power, but it comes from a resident who doesn't have power right now. And I can appreciate that everybody, they're trying to keep their Christmas spirit alive, but frustration is starting to set in. She says that all she wants for Christmas is for it to come back on, but if it's not going to be possible, she just wants the truth. So she wants to be able to prepare. They want to know which areas are likely going to be longer. If you can be as transparent as possible. We know that the 23rd is the day that most of the restoration times are listed on the website, but if there's going to be areas of the province that will not see it on Christmas, what areas are those? And can you provide any kind of details for these people?
I'm going to do my best. So basically, a lot of the areas will be cleaned up, and a lot of those crews are actually moving to other communities to help restore power. So the Charlotte County area, the Fredericton area, and Woodstock, I believe. Those would be the three areas that have the majority of the customers still out. So I would say that our goal is still to have all customers restored before Christmas. So our teams and crews are working so hard to have that, because I understand how frustrating it is for our customers and how difficult it is. It's difficult on a normal day, let alone this time of year. If I was to say there'd be a question around restoration, I would say those that are the small number of customers, so the 1 and 2s. So you'll see on the website a number of incidents. There are a number of those that have only 1 or 2 customers, and they would fall into all 3 of those areas. So depending where that individual customer lies, the only ones that could potentially be longer, I would say, would be those. The larger incidents, 10 above, those ones should all be restored. That's our goal. There could be a few stragglers.
Do you have a follow-up, Ms. Brown?
I think there's a lot of people at this point that are asking a lot of questions, and those questions they're going to continue on for the next little while, and they're just looking for answers. Like this storm, we all knew, I guess, was coming that day, but do you actually feel MB Power was prepared for the storm to be as bad as it was?
So yes, I do think we were prepared. We base it on, so we watch the weather several days in advance. We have a number of different weather forecasters or weather information that's coming into us. We also have a predictor that has AI that actually helps us predict storms. So it looks at weather from all these different sources and then determines how many outages, kind of the locations of those outages. So we use that as a good data point. We also obviously have a lot of people with a lot of expertise as well that manage the storm. So, from that, we prepare accordingly. So we would actually then set up our EMOs, our emergency measure organizations in our own centers. We would look at how many crews we feel we need based on the weather predictions. So then we would take the approach of reaching out to get additional resources to help us if we need that based on the numbers. Then
Sorry.
yes, yeah, all of that was done. And then we would actually stage those resources in the respective areas where we see the weather having the most impact. So all of that was done, absolutely.
Silas Brown, Global.
Were there additional, initially off the bat, were there out-of-province crews that were initially called in to deal with this, or has that only started happening in the last day or so?
So what I would say is, as we're preparing for the event, we also look at other jurisdictions, and we work with a lot of our partners in other jurisdictions. So we would be in constant communication with Nova Scotia Power, PEI, those other areas. So that was all part of the initial restoration efforts. I would say that once the storm hit, so we were prepared with what we felt we needed in order to respond. Once the storm hit, we obviously saw winds like we've never seen, damage like we're not predicting based on what we saw last week. So those conversations become much more frequent around how can we all, get more support in order to deal with our restoration efforts.
I don't know if that really answered my question. I mean, when were additional out-of-province resources engaged then?
We would have felt we had enough resources while we were preparing for the storm. So I would say, I don't have an exact time for you, but as soon as we understood the extent of our damage, we'd be reaching out to our other partners. Now, rest assured, all of the other jurisdictions did get impacted as well. So Nova Scotia was significantly impacted, Maine was significantly impacted. So, getting additional resources from those areas just wasn't possible at the beginning.
So in hindsight, should that have happened earlier, and if that had happened earlier, to bring more resources from out of province in, would we maybe be looking at more people with power on right now? Should that have happened earlier?
No, I don't think it could have happened earlier, frankly. I think it's part of our process that we follow, and I think those resources, we did have additional resources, significant number of additional resources actually on the weekend that we actually staged in various parts of the province. So,
Thank you. Sam Farley with CBC.
Hi there. I'm wondering if does a storm like this change how NB Power might approach proactive vegetation management in the future for other storms?
So with regards to storms, I would say we actually look at every storm and we look at lessons learned with regards to, are there things that we can do to improve? Are there tools out there? Working with our partners, all of those things. As it relates to vegetation management, we do have a strong program. Like I mentioned earlier, we've spent over $120 million on vegetation management in the past 9 years. And we also, as part of our asset management, vegetation management program, we work closely with all of our other utility partners and other organizations that help support us in making sure that, we're doing benchmarking and looking at how others are doing it and are there efficiencies to be gained. And we've actually done a lot of that over the past several years, using different tools, technologies to help make sure that we're utilizing those dollars in the best possible way. So,
Mr. Farley, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'd have a quick follow-up for EMO or the minister in terms of registering damage for the storm. How does what you're seeing you're hearing already, how does this compare to other storm events that we've seen recently in New Brunswick?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think, anecdotally, many of us look at this, and if we live in this province, we knew when the storm hit that this was going to be pretty significant. and by comparison of other storms, I think Arthur was around 140,000. That was several years ago. Post-tropical storm Arthur was around 140,000. We were well over 100,000 with this one. Just to give you an idea of apples to apples comparison, I guess. So yes, it was a significant event. And but really, where we get the real information is through the reporting that we're now releasing today. This is where we ask people that, again, this is uninsurable losses. So if your private insurance does not cover it, or you do not have private insurance, this is where you would register damages to your property, and then that will give us a better gauge, and we have systems, checks and balances in place that we will review that information to see if we meet that $3 million threshold as required under the DFA. So again, we know there's damage out there. Does it meet the $3 million threshold? We're not sure. That's what the registering is all part of the process.
Eloise avec Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Ms. Poirier, could you please repeat in French the situation before Christmas? Do we expect all the powers to be restored? And what are the conditions that power line technicians are working with currently? Could you please repeat? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? So this is for Ms. Poirier. Could you please repeat in French if everyone will have their powers restored before Christmas, and what are the working conditions for power line technicians in New Brunswick at the moment? Thank you for this question. So we're working so hard. All of our teams are working very hard. So we want the power to be restored, and we're working so hard to make sure that all the power will be restored before Christmas. So the conditions for the power line technicians, well, it's very difficult. There are cases where there are many downed trees, there are broken poles, some equipment is broken as well, so it's very difficult to get to other areas in the province. Some areas are quite remote. It's not in a city or a town, so it's quite difficult. And as I mentioned earlier, there are cases where it requires many hours to get the power back on. So it's not only 1 hour or 2 hours to repair the lines. In some cases, it requires a full day. So it's not easy. It's certainly complex work. But I would like to repeat that our crews are working very hard, and they are determined to reestablish power for everyone before Christmas. Do you have a quick follow-up question? Yes, thank you. So for my follow-up questions, the crews like Hydro-Québec, how long will they stay in the province? So I think the question was, how long will Hydro-Québec stay in the province? Until all their clients have their powers restored.
Nathan, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? I
Loud
must
and
not
clear.
have heard that you were calling for me. That's my fault. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I believe my question is for Ms. Poirier. Perhaps you can clarify this, but why does it seem like NB Power relies primarily on reports of outages to know how many people are out? Like, is there another system that can monitor for them, or does the utility rely solely on people calling them in?
Very good question, actually. We actually do, so on our transmission line, it's a little bit different. So those Trans-Canada highways, we get information on those. But from a customer perspective, we do rely on customers calling in. Now, that will definitely change when we have all of our smart meters installed. So we actually started that mass deployment on November 1st of this year. It's going to take about 2 years to get all of those meters installed. But those meters have the communication to tell us if there's no power at that premise. So, you know, not to say that we still don't want customers to call, but we will be able to have that information fed to us, which will actually help in, you know, quick identifying those outages quicker.
Do you have a follow-up, Mr. DeLong?
Yes, I do, actually. Thank you. Also for Ms. Poirier, you mentioned that there's a bit of a technical glitch right now that you're having with the website, so that the outage numbers are not accurate at the moment. So just wondering where we can find accurate information if the numbers online currently are not accurate.
So actually, thank you for that question. We're actually working, we have our IT department and a number of folks are actually working on getting that fixed as soon as possible. So hopefully that's imminent, and those numbers should reflect more accurately here in the next little bit.
Thank you. Hina, Canadian
Thanks.
Press.
I was wondering about your tree cutting budget. You talked about it being 120 million over the past 9 years, but that's not completely accurate, is it? The budget has been trimmed quite a bit over the past few years. Can you go through the past 3 years, how much the budget has been reduced and why?
I wouldn't necessarily say reduce. So again, we go back to, it is about 120 million over the past 9 years is what we've spent. It averages anywhere between, I'd say, 12.5 to 14, 15 million a year, depending on the year. And we would look at, you know, certain things. So we look at our program and we look at which feeders need to be, are performing less accurately or more poorly than others. So we would focus on that. We look at as well the widening of our right-of-ways and what needs to be widened. So it just depends on the year. It's hard to just look at it from a 1 year perspective because vegetation is not just a 1 year. So we actually look at our program as a whole and try to maintain vegetation management. So there's transmission and distribution. And we, like I said, we look at the widening of our right-of-ways. We look at danger trees. We look at mulching. We look at a number of different things as part of our program.
That didn't answer my question. You did have, your tree trimming budget has been cut, hasn't it?
Well, this year we were actually almost 14.5 million, so I would say no. Last year it was a little bit less than that, but again, keep in mind that over the past several years we've actually used some technologies that actually help us with some of using those dollars more efficiently. So we're using LiDAR, we're using satellite imagery as a pilot here in the not too distant future. We're working with other utilities. We did some benchmarking a couple of years ago. We were actually able to reduce our budget because we actually gain some efficiencies, understanding how some others were doing it. So again, it's difficult to just look at 1 year. It's an entire program.
And I was also wondering if you can tell me, all of these immediate measures are just in the moment. It's more reactive than proactive. Why hasn't NB Power asked to do something like start burying power lines so that you don't keep facing this thing over and over again? Every time a non-existent butterfly flaps its wings in the Amazon, we lose power here. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We have approximately 28,000 kilometers of line in the province. So we have about 7,000 kilometers of transmission line, and we have about 21,000 of distribution line. And the difference there is transmission is, like I said, the Trans-Canada Highway. Distribution is the streets, if you want to kind of think of it that way. It has been looked at in the past. The cost associated with burying underground wire is astronomical. At this point, there's no business case to do that. Most utilities would actually be in the same position. So it's not that it hasn't been looked at, and maybe in future, if things got cheaper and you could do it, again, it wouldn't be everywhere. You wouldn't be able to do it that way, but there is no business case to do that. it's too costly.
Thank you. Alexandre Boudreau, l'Acadie Nouvelle.
Oui, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. So I have a quick question. So I hear the translation, it's not very practical. So I'm just wondering when the problem will be resolved on your website. Will it be today, tomorrow? Do you have a more specific timeline on this? I would like to give you an exact time or date. I expect that it would be today. We're working very hard to resolve this issue today. At this stage, that's all I can tell you. I'm sorry. Do you have a follow-up question? No, all my other questions have been answered.
Ms. Hogarth, can you unmute, please?
Thank you, Bruce. I'm just wondering, from the perspective of your teams and their experiences over the past decade, do storms like this seem to be becoming more frequent? And if so, what proactive measures are you taking to address that increase in storms like this?
I would say not so much. I would say they're getting more intense, if I was to answer that question. There is climate change. I think we can see it all around us, and I think we see it in our storms and weather events that are occurring in the province as well as other parts in the country, actually. I think, so with the things that we do, we've been working a lot with our partners. We're a member of Electricity Canada. I'm a member of that committee, and we talk a lot about some of the things that we can do in order to improve. So, obviously vegetation management, we look at storm hardening, so where can we actually harden our equipment or have a more robust system, for instance, like in the Acadian Peninsula where salt spray and those kinds of things. So we did a lot of work there after the Tracadie ice storm. So, those are the kinds of things that we would look at in order to address kind of climate change items.
Do you have a follow-up, Ms. Hogarth?
I do. Thanks, Bruce. For those who have their power back, who are just getting it back, is there any protocol to follow, especially with so many homes decked out with Christmas lights?
It's a good question. I think I got asked that question yesterday. So there's always a concern around coal load pickup is what we call it. It's normally an issue in really cold temperatures. I would say at this point it really isn't a concern. Not everything is brought back online at the same time. So you could have a major line that's brought on, but the sidelines come on one at a time. So I would say at this point, there's no concern around that. I mean, I always, when I lose power, I actually do go around and turn off my lights and things that I don't need just to make sure that when the power is restored, I don't have everything lit up in the house. But I would say from a power restoration perspective, customers should be okay.
Nippon with CBC. Nippon with CBC. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, voilà la fin de notre mise à jour.
Here is the end of our update.
Thank you very much.